What's up? It's Dr. Taylor Krick at the Washington Wellness Center, and I'm excited to talk today about neurofeedback. So here at Washington Wellness Center, our clinic here in Washington, Illinois, we've got a lot of things to support brain health. We've got our vitamins and supplements. We do our functional medicine, which I do, across the globe, virtually with people. But also we have licensed clinical professional counseling. Here we've got our infrared sauna, and we're always just looking for ways to improve brain health, improve brain function. I think that's just a growing need, not only the proper psychiatric and psychological, diagnosis and treatment, but then what else can we do to support healthy brains, whether it's aging brains and memory loss and those things that are growing, or it's developing brains and things like ADHD and behavior. So we're super excited to implement neurofeedback. So basically, I'm going to explain it all in this video, and I have a slide deck, and I've got some videos to show you of some examples. But basically, the gist of it is your brain is mapped using EEG technology. So if you've ever known anybody that has a seizure and they go to the hospital, they get EEG brain scans. So your brain is scanned. So we have the exact same technology. It's 19 channel EEG brain scan. And then a feedback program is developed, but there's a lot of software and hardware and technological jargon that we're not going to get into, but I'm just going to show you some examples of what happens, because your brain is scanned and analyzed, and then basically you're given a training protocol of how you can rewire your brain. So anyway, without further ado, let me just jump into my slide deck and show you some of these videos and things as well. So what is neurofeedback? So, for starters, I think it's important. This doesn't have anything really to do with the neurofeedback, but the first thing that you do in clinic is you fill out a lot of paperwork. So you fill out some paperwork and it asks you different things about your physiology, different things about your symptomatology, and I'll show you some examples, because what it's going to say is you might rate yourself bad at math comprehension, but the brain scan might say, no, actually that area of your brain is working fine. Or you might think that you're great at math comprehension or reading comprehension, and the scan might say, hey, this area of your brain's actually underperforming. So we match that up to your specific, presentation there. Then your brain is mapped using 19-point EEG technology. Your brain map is analyzed by advanced software, and a training protocol is developed to rewire your brain. So looking at things, and I'll show you the pictures, but the frequency, like the different frequencies, the different wavelengths of your brain, the amplitude of those frequencies, how much is being output within the delta range or the theta range, the symmetry, how well your brain's connecting right to left, and the location. It's 19 points across your brain, so the location. And the big picture metaphor that I've been saying is that your brain is kind of like your stereo of your car. You don't want the volume too high, you don't want it too low, you don't want too much bass, you don't want too much treble, you don't want too much balance left to right, you don't want too much fade front to back. And when all those things are clicking, then the music's going to sound pretty harmonious and enjoyable for you. And same thing with your brain. So who could neurofeedback be good for? Well, PTSD, that's one that it's FDA approved for PTSD. ADD, ADHD, behavioral problems, kids bouncing off the walls, or lack of focus, or things like that. Whether it's a kid or even if it's a professional, and you're, let's say a high achiever and you want to maximize how well your brain's working. OCD, dyslexia. There's a chiropractor that I know that has this in her practice, and I reached out to her when I was in the buying process of looking at different hardwares and softwares and things like that. And I reached out to her, and she said, I implemented it for my daughter's dyslexia, and it changed her life. Memory loss, so short-term, long-term memory, dementia and those things, just brain sharpness, concussions, post-concussion. And then anything mood-wise, any depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, and it could really be good for anyone with a brain. So I'm not suggesting that it's, diagnosing or treating any of these conditions, but it can support really, basically anything, because it's supporting brain function. So even here's just an example of like This is a study, and then I did a whole video on this study. I think that the title is very wordy, but it says normalizing the alpha brain rhythms reduced symptoms of PTSD following a randomized controlled study of EEG neurofeedback. And it says collective research has identified a key EEG signature in patients with PTSD consisting of abnormally reduced alpha rhythms. So that's kind of the consistent thing that we're looking for in PTSD, is that pattern. And when they did this randomized controlled study, it showed great success with reduced symptoms and improved brain scans. Here's another one of just a picture of Kirk Cousins, the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, just doing an EEG brain scan and neurofeedback. Here's a picture of my 5-year-old doing it. And let me just show you this as well. Here's that. So for my son, 5 years old, you just sit there and with your eyes open and eyes closed. And it's not that quick and easy, but depending on the kids, sometimes it really is quick and easy. But what we're trying to capture is some data of what your brain's doing with your eyes open and what your brain's doing with your eyes closed. So that's what the computer screen was showing. So here are some examples of these brain maps. Now, I'm obviously not going to get into all the details, but I think kind of the point is that there's a lot of analyzation and a lot of technology to it. And again, I'm not going to try to dumb it down or smart it up. You think you'll get the point that it's pretty complex. Here's some pictures of some magnitude. There's delta wavelengths, theta, alpha, beta, high beta. These are slower waves. These are faster waves, more like anxiety. This is more like deep sleep. So what's your output in these areas? What's your dominant frequency? Again, I'm not going to try to explain that. Here's another person's where their dominant frequency looks a little bit different. And then down here where we see the red, we see the interconnectivity. So that's the left to right, more like the balance of your stereo system. There's another person's, magnitude, and you see the reds or the betas towards the back of the brain, and whereas the deltas or some of these others, delta, theta, whatever, but that's the front. You can kind of see the nose there, and there's the ears. Another asymmetry, just left to right, the connections left to right. Asymmetry matters a lot for mood. Yeah. So here's some other just pictures of the analyses that are done. Eyes closed, the midline analysis, the gray boxes are the norms, then the delta, theta, alpha, beta, and how close are you to norm in these different regions of the brain with eyes closed and then with eyes open. And just another visual representation of the same thing that's just a little bit easier to show, a client or somebody. Say, hey, this is where your brain is very high activity. You have very high alpha output in the back of your brain here. Whereas over here, you've got more high delta output at the front of your brain here, with the eyes open, which is usually a sign of just straight up sleep, poor sleep, with the eyes open delta. But anyway, you see some high beta here at the back. So some just, I don't know, interesting things of just the location, the frequency, the amplitude, all those things like I mentioned. Here's another just person's brain, more delta activity at the front. I can't tell if this is eyes open or eyes closed. So it says open. So again, probably sleep for this particular brain scan. But if the eyes were closed, then we'd say maybe more head traumas or more heavy metal toxicity or mold toxicity or traumatic brain injuries in that delta frontal area. And these are some of the narratives. So again, I'm not getting into it much on this video, but you can read some of these and just say low posterior theta is associated with short-term memory efficiency and sequential memory efficiency. So like if we see that on the scan, then that might be something you might experience, or if it matches up with some of the things that you want to target or improve, then let's train that low posterior theta and try to change that, try to rewire that. Low posterior delta is associated with poor memory again, and sensory processing deficit, especially with reading functions. Alpha hypercoherence is related to difficulty shifting tasks. Low temporal thetas with poor empathy, poor focus, poor emotional regulation. And, for some people, they might have 10 of these bad ones. For some, they might have 5, but it's just the narrative of what we're seeing on your map. Here's another one. Low theta, diminished emotional awareness and memory processing due to excess social distress. So that's interesting. Negative rumination, bad thoughts get into your mind and you just keep repeating them and can't get them out of your mind. Short-term and sequential memory again, difficulty shifting task again. So this is a different person's. So you see some of those things repeat, but everybody's brain is obviously just, I don't know, unique and different. This is what the client gets. When the client gets their MAP report, it's a little more simplified. It says, these are the 4 areas of your brain that tested the worst. So the 4 red ones are just the 4 areas that had the most abnormalities. So frontal for this person. And what it's saying over here is where your cognitive efficiency might be. Now, a lot of the people that have done these maps, myself and other colleagues of mine, some of these people they're doctors, they have good brains, good cognitive efficiency. So it's not saying that you're dumb. It's just saying that your brain could be working better, I would say. Now, this is where we get interesting, because this column right here, the CEC, this is where you rated yourself based on your symptom surveys and your paperwork. So whoever this was, they said that they were really good in verbal processing. They thought that they were really good at that, but their area of their brain, EEG-wise, did not test very well for that. So sometimes that might match up perfectly with what you think of yourself. Sometimes it might not. This person also thought that they were very highly motivated, and that area was yellow. They also thought that they had very good reading comprehension, and that area was red. Not to say that they can't read books well, but just to say that that area of their brain on EEG appeared to be more of an issue than what that person thought it was. So these are some of, again, the major areas: attention, verbal processing, memory. Then down here we see focus, mood, relaxation. So focus is more like some of the amplitudes, the mood is some of the symmetries. The relaxation is more I don't know, combo of both of those. But we can see over here the focus is more good. It's just a pretty simple gas gauge of is your tank full or is it empty. But yeah, so that's the screen. This is a different one. So for this person, these are their 4 areas. More in the back of the brain, more so than in the front of the brain. Their cognitive efficiency, some of these were exactly right. They thought that they had poor attention, and their scan showed the same thing, but they thought over here they were good at motivation. Their scan showed the same thing. They thought they were good at decision making. The scan showed the same thing, but some of these weren't as good. Now, focus, mood, and relaxation, all these look pretty good, but further down in the report, there were some other abnormalities and still some areas that needed to be trained. So it's just a client report to say, hey, these areas are good, these areas are bad. But I think the takeaway is, what do you do to train the brain? So here's, again, just some of these examples of, you might have thought that you were decent at being socially inappropriate, but that area of your brain might not be testing very well. Or you might think that you're good at regulating your emotions, but that area of your brain might not be working very well on EEG brain scans. So here's a couple others where this person, rated themselves worse than they actually were. And in every area, they were actually a little bit better than what they thought they were. So it's, again, what areas do you want to improve? What areas do you need to improve? And then we can develop a protocol off of that. Here's the protocols too. So again, I'm not going to get into this because it's not going to make any sense to you, but here's the protocols from an eyes closed brain map. It says try protocol 21 and protocol 5. Protocol 21 is going to be training 8 to 10 hertz down and 15 to 20 hertz up on the left. And on the right, it's going to be training 8 to 10 hertz down and 12 to 15 up. at P3 and P4, so in the parietal regions. Whereas protocol 5 is going to be FP1 and FP2 in the frontal regions. We're going to be training these frequencies up on the left and down and up on the right here. And then you can wear flashing glasses that are entrainment, and you can set the entrainment frequency that's all pre-programmed into these protocols. So then you're putting on flashing glasses, we're putting electrodes on these different areas of your brain while you do the brain training, but that's what's going to be happening. Here's another one, same thing, eyes open map, but you can see here's the two. This one is more FP1, FP2, and C3, C4, so different regions of the brain and different frequencies that are being trained up or down and different colors and such. So here's a picture of the training screen, and then I'm going to show you some videos of some actual training because it's just really, really cool to see, I would say. But yeah, so you're hooked up to these electrodes and you're literally watching a show or listening to music. And if you're doing what if your brain is doing what it's supposed to, then the movie plays clear or the songs play clear. I'll show you one in a sec. My mom's sitting with her eyes closed, listening to worship music. And then there's another one I've got two of me, one where I'm watching a Henry Ford documentary and another where I'm just listening to music. So here's another picture of the training screen, but that's all based on, that's the feedback part of this, is your brain is giving feedback at all times saying, hey, what is my brain doing right now in real time? And the protocol is being adjusted in real time. So you'll actually see that on these videos. So check this out. Here's the first one. So you can barely tell, but the music is fading in and out with that one. Now, these ones you can tell quite a bit. So here's one. You can't tell as much with this one, I would say. But this is me watching the video. That's Henry Ford. So you can kind of hear it getting louder, and you can kind of see the screen fading. It's very evident when you're doing it. The screen will fade in and out. And then here's the last one, which is a music one, but it's cool. You can definitely get the point from this one. What's up, Dr. Taylor? I'm doing a neurofeedback session right now, and the fact that I'm even trying to record this video is completely just messing it up. But I wanted to show it to you guys. It's pretty cool. Obviously I'm going to put all these contraptions in here, but I'll show you some of the display screens and some of the things. So listen, my music is playing right now, but you can't tell because my brain's not doing what it's supposed to. So when my brain's doing what it's supposed to, the music turns back on and the screen doesn't fade. But it's not playing right now because my brain's not doing what it's supposed to because I'm recording this video for you guys. But it's crazy. It's super, super, super duper cool. So stay tuned. There'll be a lot more info coming out about this. So that's basically it. But it's incredible to experience because your brain has to focus, but you don't really know what you're focusing on. So you're like, but you can feel, you're like, and then the music starts playing or the video starts playing and it comes back brighter and stronger. And you're like, okay, like your brain feels rewarded. And that's how it works too, is when with repetition, when repeated over time, your brain wants the music to play, your brain wants the video to play. So by doing the neurofeedback training, your brain rewires. So doing that with repetition. Now, what they say in the neurofeedback world is they say that it could take 10 to 20 sessions to have noticeable changes, and more like 20 to 40 sessions to really wire those in. So kind of like walking a trail through the woods. You know, if you walk through that trail once, you haven't exactly burned that trail or blazed that trail. But if you keep walking that same path, eventually that path gets really, really easy to follow the next time. So the same thing is true with neurofeedback. So you come in, it's about a 20 to 30 minute appointment, maybe 45-minute appointment. We're also combining this in our clinic with something called heart math. So I wasn't planning on talking about this, I guess, but I'll share a little bit. So Maggie Bagley is going to be implementing the neurofeedback. She's a licensed clinical social worker. She's been in social work for 25 years. And she spent the last 3 years here locally in our school districts, you know, working with kids, working with behaviorally challenged kids and otherwise in the school district. So she's going to be implementing the neurofeedback. She's certified, excuse me, in heart math. So heart math is a little bit different. That might be a whole nother video, but it's pretty simple. But an electrode's hooked to your ear, and it's measuring your heart rate and your heart rate variability. So we're going to start each neurofeedback session with about 5 to 10 minutes of heart math, which is calming and resets the nervous system and gets you into a state where your brain's going to be more effectively trained. Now, we also, as we progress, you know, we've got all kinds of different things, like every 10th neurofeedback session, we'll have a reassessment. Every 20th session, we'll do a re-brain map. But this is something kind of like exercise, that it's something that you could do for the rest of your life. But also, if you have an intended purpose or an intended goal or an intended target, you might dedicate 3 to 6 months to training your brain a couple times a week and seeing what happens with regards to, again, brain function or memory or energy or mood or sleep, or just, again, improved brain function for healthy aging too. So I hope that helps answer some questions. It's still a little bit of a mystery to the community because it's kind of hard to explain, as you see here. But hopefully that video helps just make sense of how we can map and measure the brain and then retrain the brain with expected progress coming from that. So anyway, hopefully that is helpful. Let me know what questions you guys have, and we'd love to see you in our office getting your brains mapped and working on them, trying to make them a little bit better.